Imagine walking into a high-security vault, taking millions of dollars in cold, hard cash, and walking out the front door while the police watch you. Now, imagine that even after they catch you, they can't arrest you. Not because you're a diplomat, and not because you have a get-out-of-jail-free card, but because, technically, you haven't broken a single law. Most robberies involve masks, guns, and broken windows, but the most dangerous thieves don't carry crowbars, they carry law books. They don't look for cracks in a wall, they look for cracks in the system. Today, we're diving into a story so audacious and so mathematically perfect that it earned the title of the legal robbery. This wasn't just a crime, it was a masterclass in exploitation. A $3.5 million heist executed in broad daylight where the victims were forced to sign off on their own loss. How did they do it? And more importantly, why couldn't the government stop them? Put on your seatbelts, because this is the story of the most genius loophole ever exploited. To understand how this robbery worked, we first have to understand the environment. We aren't in a dark alleyway. We are in the world of high-stakes finance and outdated regulations. Laws are written by humans, and humans make mistakes. Usually, these mistakes are small typos, but sometimes a mistake is so massive it creates a ghost door, a path that exists in reality but isn't covered by the law. In this specific case, the target wasn't a bank's physical cash, but its digital transfer protocols. You see, every time you send money, there's a settlement period. In the 21st century, we expect things to be instant, but in the back end of global banking, there are still legacy systems from the 80s and 90s running the show. Our protagonist, let's call him the architect, spent years studying the fine print of these banking codes. He discovered a 48-hour window where money could be confirmed as received by one bank before it was actually debited from another. In the world of finance, this is known as a float. Most people use this float to balance their checkbooks. The architect used it to build a bridge to $3.5 million. The genius wasn't just in finding the window, it was in the scale. If you do this with $100, no one cares. If you do it with $3 million, the system panics. But the architect knew that if he played by the literal rules of the bank's own contract, the panic wouldn't matter. The day of the robbery didn't start with a getaway car. It started with a series of perfectly legal wire transfers. The architect utilized a network of shell companies, all legally registered, all with clean tax records. He began moving funds in a circular pattern, from company A to company B, then B to C, and C back to A. To a computer, this looked like massive business growth. To the architect, it was a way to artificially inflate the perceived value of his accounts. Because of the 48-hour lag we mentioned earlier, he was able to show the bank that he had $3.5 million in available funds, even though the actual cash was still in transit from the previous step. Now here's the genius part. Instead of just trying to withdraw the money, which would trigger an alarm, he used the legal robbery maneuver. He contacted the bank and informed them of a discrepancy in their own terms of service. He pointed out that, according to the agreement, if a transfer is confirmed, the bank is legally obligated to release the funds immediately upon request, regardless of the settlement status. He walked into the branch, dressed in a sharp suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He wasn't nervous. Why would he be? He had a team of lawyers on standby and a signed contract in his hand. He requested the payout in the form of cashier's checks and gold bullion. The bank manager was hesitant. They knew something felt wrong, but when they checked the system, the numbers were green. When they checked the law, their hands were tied. By refusing the payout, the bank would be the ones breaking the law, breaching a multi-million-dollar contract. They handed him the money, he thanked them, shook the manager's hand, and walked out. Within 72 hours, the float collapsed. The bank realized the $3.5 million they had given away was essentially vapor money that didn't exist in the original account. They did what any bank would do. They called the police. When the authorities arrived at the architect's home, they expected to find a man in hiding. Instead, they found him sitting in his garden, drinking tea, with his lawyers present. The police charged him with grand larceny, but the architect's defense was legendary. His lead lawyer stood up and said, "My client didn't steal anything. He requested a service that was guaranteed by your own bank's contract. If your system allowed the transfer and your contract mandated the payout, where is the crime? You cannot arrest a man for following your own rules better than you do." The case went to court and paralyzed the legal system. The prosecution struggled. To prove theft, you have to prove intent to deprive through unlawful means. But the architect argued his means were entirely lawful. He used the bank's own software, signed the bank's own forms, and followed the bank's own timeline. The robbery was actually a contractual fulfillment error. The money wasn't stolen, it was misallocated by the bank's own faulty logic. So, what happened to the $3.5 million? Much of it was tied up in offshore accounts that were legally unreachable by the time the trial ended. The architect eventually settled for a much smaller fine and served no jail time. This story changed the way banks operate. It led to the instant settlement protocols we see today and forced a complete rewriting of digital banking laws across the globe. But it leaves us with a chilling thought. We live in a world governed by code and contracts. We like to think that right and wrong are what keep us safe, but in reality, it's often just a series of if-then statements. The architect proved that if you're smart enough to read between the lines, the world is full of legal robberies waiting to happen. The question isn't whether the vault is locked. The question is, who wrote the rules for the lock? Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown fascinating, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Let us know in the comments, do you think this man was a genius or just a common thief who found a lucky break? Until next time, stay curious.